So that's one thing is doing that. Another thing that I find in the assignments that I tend to give is often I'll ask people to do interviews. And the citation of interviews is always a very creative process in student papers. But there is a correct way to do this. And we've got some examples, and I don't know if you want to talk about a couple of those examples, and we'll show you some examples of what we're talking about here, where it is not quite hitting the standard of what we're looking for from an APA citation. Okay? Exactly. And it's not hard to do. It's not hard to do this, but to do it correctly, to do it with discipline, shows something about both good practice and about yourself as a researcher.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to interviews, one of the most important, number one thing is you need to ask for consent of the person that you're sitting with. I'm not going to be able to reference Max or Thomas if I don't have their consent that I can use their names in the paper. And if you don't have consent of using their name, and usually these are recorded, you need to make sure that you let them know where is the data going to be storage and the safety of that data and where it's storage. And the more information that you get from the person, let's say their position or the place where they are, you need to use it as part of your in-text citation. And remember, we're talking about two things that need to happen when we are doing APA citation, which is in-text citations and references. So let's start with in-text citation when it comes to interview. This is a great example of how in-text citation is used, where you have, for example, as per the interview conducted by or with Thomas Sullivan, and then parentheses, you put the date in which that interview was conducted, and you reference it as this is a personal communication. So interview falls under the personal communication style of referencing for it. And then for that particular in-text, we need to add it as well inside of the reference. And I think a good practice or a good example, it's the following, right? It says interview transcript, you put the name of the class, you put the date in which that interview happened, and then the link of the recording, of course, again, if you have the consent of the person. Put the link of the recording, make sure that the faculty has access to that recording, that it's an unlisted, not a public link, so that anybody with the link in which you are adding that interview have access to it and can verify any type of information that they would like or they want to kind of look into.
So before I ask Matt this question, let me just say, when you ask somebody if you can record them, sometimes they'll say no. That's okay. Then you ask, can I take notes? And then your job is to take notes. Okay, so that means you're writing while they're talking. You're both doing the interview and you're thinking of the questions that you want, but you're capturing the bulk of what they're trying to say. If they say no to both of them, you really can't use the interview in your research. So you have to find somebody else to do that. The other part that Sara's talked about is you do need to let them know who's going to be the recipient of that. In this case, really, it's only the professor, but you're going to say how you'll protect their privacy about that and agree to any guidelines that they have. So, Matt, does that help you as you're thinking about how you're going to in the paper that you guys are doing?
Of course.
Cite the interviews.
Yes. I was just talking to Professor Sullivan and Dean Sara about we do have an interview, actually a few interviews. It's a group assignment. We have about 10 interviews between all of us, and we were really sitting yesterday and having a meeting and saying, I think we have to cite this. And I'm like, yeah, we do have to cite this because, we have 10 right. interviews. You can't really dodge around it. And we have to figure out how to cite them appropriately. So I think that this is definitely going to help